and Christian people coming up. I'm mute.
I don't know what happened.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another Josh Wonders Why. We had a little, we'll say, audio-visual malfunction at the beginning. So you may have seen Kelly and me at the beginning, like just not prepared at all, and then we realized we had to cut to the other video. So if you're watching us live, maybe you missed that. If you're watching us pre-recorded, I apologize for the little blip in the beginning. So like I said, welcome to another edition of Josh Wonders Why. If you're new to this is a weekly conversation that Kelly and I have about a variety of topics. Typically gets on Monday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and we like to have it live so that we can get any of your comments, questions, thoughts during the time that we have together. So if you're in here and you're watching us, feel free to say hi, tell us where you're watching us from. If you have any questions or if you want us to discuss anything, by all means bring them up.
I can smell your coffee. It smells really good.
So
it reminds me that I do coffee with Kelly in the morning.
Yes.
And then you bring coffee to Josh Wonders Why. So, I don't know.
I'm trying to think back because I forgot to pay attention. Did you actually have coffee this morning?
I did have coffee this morning.
I did not think to check. I was kicking myself.
I forgot to drink any though before I started. That was the problem.
Well, I had a lot of sugar right before this, and my stomach was feeling a little nauseous because of sugar, so I got to balance it out with bitter coffee. I feel like that's going to help.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see how this goes for the next half hour or so.
Let me know.
So, I guess to introduce tonight, first thing I was thinking about this, and I feel like, I don't know, as a Christian, I'm getting a little tired of just seeing Christians depicted or being discussed in the mainstream news, right? With, pushing for 10 Commandments in schools like we talked about, also pushing that you must teach the Bible in schools, pushing anti-LGBTQIA plus agendas. And then recently there's as you search Christians in the news, the first thing that pops up is a discussion on where the Olympics being rude to Christians by the opening ceremony, pretending to be, a Greek festival with Dionysus, but thinking, it's the Last Supper, right? Or then also the article of Trump coming out and saying, Christians, I encourage you to vote because in 4 years from now, you don't need to worry about that anymore, right? So with all this stuff happening, it's like, well, when I hear this and I read this, it's like, but, most of the stuff is, as a Christian, I don't believe in this stuff. Am I in the fringe? And if I'm in the fringe, is Christianity sort of becoming a cult? Do I need to get out of this and move on to something else? Maybe, I don't know, another religion, maybe Buddhist or something. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about the question and discuss, is Christianity a cult? And tonight, we won't get to the answering that question unless Kelly does, but what I wanted to start with is just go over historically, have cults evolved over the years, and then also discuss what are the characteristics of cults, right? And by cults, we're talking about the CULTS.
Yes.
Not the Indianapolis Colts, but if you want to talk about that, we can as well.
No, we can't.
Kicking myself.
I can't.
So I thought about bringing some trivia to ask you about Colts and have it being about the Indianapolis Colts, but maybe next week.
I might know. You never know.
So I think to start with, I wanted to maybe go through the history of cults, starting with ancient history, because I think you and I both found that in ancient times, like the ancient Greek and Romans, there were cults that were, we'll say, formed around the time, and they were formed around worshiping various deities or gods or goddesses, I think, at the time, or different schools of thought. At the time, I think also they were sort of intertwined with the society, so they were accepted by society, and it was understood that, oh, I'm a cult of this goddess, or I'm part of a cult of this goddess. And I think you mentioned something about they were born of the need to survive as well, for have people to stick together with a common thought.
Religion helps people make sense of things, and it brings people together for under kind of a unified reason.
Yeah,
I guess.
And that's the first definition. When I was searching, there's different definitions of cults, and I think this first one is used for this historical, time period, which says it's basically a great devotion to a person, an idea, object, movement, or work, right? And that's it. And I think that was what the ancients used that for. At some point, it sort of turned to be more of a religious movement that exists in some degree in tension against like the dominant religions or the cultural inclinations of society. Basically, it was outside the mainstream, did questionable activities and stuff. And I don't know where that switch happened from it being accepted to,
One thing is, when does a cult become a religion?
Yeah.
And there may be something to how long has this cult been around? Because when Christianity started, it was the new thing, it was the weird thing, and the people that worship the Greek gods or the Jews who were not interested in Christianity, they viewed Christians as a cult. That they have lost their minds and they're following some guy who's dead. And
I think you just answered a question. Christianity is a cult. Case closed, right? It started as a cult, maybe, in people's minds.
It depends on how you define cult. But if we're talking about in ancient times when people would follow a person or a god, then, after a while, it becomes normalized and becomes accepted. And I think in the case of Christianity, maybe it's too bad that it became normalized, because once Constantine became a Christian and decided everyone needs to be a Christian, then that was kind of the beginning of the downfall of Christianity. So there's something to the longevity of something, but also, who are you following in this group? Are you following, like Christianity was, came out of Judaism, and then Islam came out of Judaism, sort of, and Christianity.
Yeah.
Like they're influenced by both. But all three of those religions have the same God, and all trace their lineage back to Abraham.
Okay.
So, whereas some people would consider Islam a cult, some Christians would believe that, but for many others, it is their religion, and they wouldn't think they were in a cult, and they're following God the way we think we're following God as Christians.
Okay. Do you think when Christianity went mainstream with Constantine, is that maybe, and I was trying to find this, I couldn't find this, so maybe, I guess we can discuss this, is that maybe where the switch was between, I think before that, cults were probably more acceptable norms, they're more not a derogatory term.
Right.
Once Christianity became mainstream, was that more of maybe a political move or something to help people adopt Christianity, saying, you don't want to be part of this religion, that's on the fringe, that's a cult. You be part of this new religion, right?
Because then it was, well, if you're not part of this group called Christians who believe in Jesus Christ and follow him, believe in the triune God, then you're by default in a cult.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think when you're defining the difference between a cult and religion, I think that you have to consider, is your religion or cult, what is it focused on? And if it's focused on a person that's not Jesus, but focused on a person who is trying to control people, trying to extort people, hurting people, to me, that's what I think of when I think of cult.
Okay.
And I think for a lot of people, the whole Jim Jones thing kind of became like, okay, that's a cult. When stuff like that happens, that's clearly a cult.
Okay. We'll get to that.
Yes, we'll get to that later. Yeah.
So Christianity became mainstream. I think cult maybe was that when it flipped the time to become more derogatory as a political move to try to get more people to come to this Christian religion. And then I think it's then, did it basically the persecution? That probably went through the 1600s where they were maybe pushing for these radical Christians or cults.
When the
or
Reformation happened,
okay,
then that's when the Catholic Church became separate from the Protestant Church.
Okay.
So, Martin Luther didn't intend to do that. He just wanted to reform the Catholic Church, but the Catholic Church would have none of it. And so the people that wanted these reforms formed their own sect of Christianity and were separate from the Catholic Church. And then out of the Protestants, we see all these different sects developing based on, people's interpretation of Scripture and, what is baptism, what does communion mean? And they had all these different ideas, and so they kind of splintered off. And so then in the 1600s, some of the people that were being persecuted, either by another Protestant group or by the Catholic Church, then decided to come to the Americas, and where they could have their religious freedom and they could worship however they wanted to, but
Sure.
they were still Christians.
I'm saying all
They
these
were
sects that are breaking up, they still have go back to the original, following Jesus and God, right?
Right.
As opposed to a person
they're
or a
just
leader.
different flavors of Protestantism.
I like the definition of cult. It's you following a leader that's not Jesus, right? That's
There you go. That's what I say.
There you go. Okay. I feel like then maybe and I guess I really should have done better research on this. I feel like the number of cults maybe picked up in the modern era, like 1800s, 1900s, is where cults sort of started to spread more rampant, like wildfire, maybe, in a way. I'm not sure if...
Well, I think that, as
in America, at least. I don't know about...
more and more people came to America, the Christians in the New World, some of them came here so they could worship the way they wanted to. And some of them thought, well, my way is the right way. And if you don't do it this way, then you're wrong. And, we will punish you. And so, that's where you have that, the religion is the vehicle for your law and order.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you get the witch trials.
Okay.
So then I think over time, people started to break away. More and more people came, and there were different ideas, and the witch trials were over, and that's when we got Methodism, because John Wesley was with the Church of England, and he was sent here sort of as a missionary, and he ended up planting a lot of churches for the Church of England. But they didn't have enough pastors, so they could never have communion because they didn't have a pastor. So John Wesley wanted to start ordaining people in this country to pastor those churches, or at least give them sacramental privileges. And the Church of England was like, nope, can't do it. And so, Wesley didn't, just like Martin Luther, Wesley didn't come here to start a new church, but that's kind of what happened in response to the Church of England not being willing to send pastors here. So then I think, you get into the 1800s and you start to have people who are interested in spiritualism, and that was a big deal, especially the latter part of the 18th century, or the 19th century and the 20th century, the early part of the 20th century, and you have a lot of interest in spiritualism and also the occult. And so it's still kind of couched in Christianity, but eventually it starts to kind of pull away because Christians are like, no, we can't do this. We can't be calling people up from the dead. That's the Bible does say you're not supposed to do that. And so then I think they just kind of like, okay, well, we're still going to do this. We just won't be Christians. We'll just be occultist or whatever they're called.
Okay.
And then you have the doomsday cults.
When did those start
I
up?
don't know.
Okay.
But whenever somebody first said, hey, you know what? The world's going to end on this date.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, oh my gosh, okay, and we got to get ready. And, of course, it never works out.
Yeah.
They just keep changing the date. And we still have those today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those are the more popular ones, the ones the Doomsday, I think, was it?
Well, I don't know if they're more popular, but
they're
more radical.
Radical, yes.
I think.
Okay. Well, interesting. That was a crash course just from ancient times.
Well, and then there's the mid-20th century.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Where like in the 60s, when there was all this distrust of the government, and people, especially young people, wanted to find a different way to live, wanted to live at peace and all that. And so they began exploring different ways of being in community.
Yeah.
And they started learning different, like, Eastern religions and bringing that in, and, turning their backs on the church because the church was kind of part of the system that they didn't trust. And so that's where you got a lot of those kind of cults and the Flower Children and whatnot.
Like because the Manson family was one of those, right? Charlie Manson and because he had a...
Yeah, sort of. He just... I don't know. I'm not really sure what his aim was, but other than to just get some people killed.
Well, it was a community, right? It was...
Okay, yeah.
So, okay.
Because a lot of those... that were, we're going to be at peace, we're going to live together in equality. You got your communes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about doing things like that.
Okay.
It was about trying to live together, and even Christian groups would do that. Let's go live communally like the original church. The problem is that where you have that idealism, there's usually a person who's pushing that, and they have an ulterior motive.
Okay. So let's get to that then. What are the main characteristics of a cult then that maybe have, these cults all probably have a common set of characteristics.
Yeah, there's three, a group or social movement that's led by a charismatic leader. So you need a charismatic leader who's authoritative and who demands to be revered as a godlike figure. They may not say that they're God. They may say that they're worshiping God. We're all worshiping God. But they will exercise authority over people. The second one is the group has some form of indoctrination program. So charismatic leader, indoctrination. Sometimes
what does that mean?
Thought reform or mind control.
Okay.
Indoctrination, and I have also a list of elements of indoctrination.
Okay, we can
And then
table
the
that
third
then.
thing is exploitation of members, financial, sexual, or other kind of exploitation. So you have a charismatic leader, there's some sort of indoctrination, and there's exploitation of members. So, even if you are part of a group that believes in God and claims to be Christian, if those three things are going on, it's a cult. It's not true Christianity, because that's not, you can have a charismatic Christian leader.
Yeah.
As long as they're not demanding to be revered and, it's my way or the highway kind of person.
Okay. And that's what I'd like to do. So next week's, we're not ending yet, but next week's discussion, I want to look at, with these characteristics, do a case study of maybe some of the famous cults, maybe some stuff that you would not consider a cult from the 20th century, like, and discuss those, because I'm curious, and we won't get to this now, but like, some of the multimillionaire televangelists, are they pushing a cult mindset in theirs, right?
Well,
Based off this, charismatic
I do have a
leader.
list.
Okay,
I have
well,
an
we'll wait for that for next week.
list of Christians who, are claim to be, Christian leaders, but they're really leading a cult.
Sure. Wait for that for next week.
Yep.
So you said you had elements of indoctrination then, because I'm
Yeah.
curious to see what that includes.
So you have someone who's at a crossroads in life. So maybe they've been through a really hard time. They're grieving. They're vulnerable, and then you have your cult member who talks to that person and does the soft sell and invites you to the first meeting or invites you to the first dinner.
Yeah.
Just come on in. Just want to have dinner together, or just come to church with me, or this new group. It's really cool. And it makes me so happy. So the soft sell, they'll are you really happy with your life the way it is? Because if you join us, you could be really happy. There are cases where they will try to get people into a trance, whether like through the music or other things like that, maybe drugs, or try to get you, because then you're like, wow, that was really great.
Yeah. I need to
It
stay
was a
here,
good
right?
experience for you. And then there's a new reality, a closed environment. So they'll tell you, you need to stay here. It's for your protection. You can't go back to your old life because people out there just want to hurt you. They take away autonomy and free thought, and they try to keep you in, because if you get out, you might, the spell might be broken. And social isolation makes it easier to radicalize people. So, in some of the cults we'll talk about, probably you'll see that social isolation. Well, let's all go to Guyana, because nobody can leave.
Yeah.
Nobody can get to you, and that's that social isolation. And so people start to buy into that. And that's also, the social isolation that we have today as humans, and was really made evident during COVID. People will go online, right?
Yeah.
And you'll search for community online. And so that's a place where there are a lot of cults, and they'll target people who are looking for,
That's a good point. I never thought about that with the COVID, with the
Yeah.
quarantine and people staying from home long term, get lonely. And with the internet, you can easily find anything and
Yeah.
get connected with any
Yeah.
group online, or
And and there you are by yourself at home, and that's your only contact with what you think is a real world, and suddenly you're starting to buy what they're selling, and you're starting to get angry at a group of people, and so on. And then there's the dear leader, the only leader who's got the right questions, or who speaks for God, or is a God. Sometimes they claim to be God. And it's your job to keep the leader happy. The enemy, a false narrative of what would happen if you leave. The world is an evil place. Your family, they don't understand, what we're doing here, and they'll just, they'll lead you astray, that sort of thing. That's the enemy. Peer pressure makes you second guess yourself. Peer pressure is used by the leader to control members. Jim Jones used it to fuel the suicide. It's just they would practice. They had practice runs for it. And, just that peer pressure of, well, if everybody else is doing it, I guess I better do it too. And then the last one is sociopathic narcissist. The leader who says, you couldn't live without me. I'm the one who's essential. That's another thing that Jim Jones would do,
Mm-hmm.
You can't make it without me. You need me to lead you and to, tell you what God says and all this. And so you're not allowed to ask questions. And they use gaslighting or disaffirmation. Disaffirmation when the people say, no, that's not true. If you ask, no, that's not true. And they'll use it repeatedly to confuse a person or to convince them to remain in the group. So that gaslighting of saying, no, you don't understand. That's not how it happened. You shouldn't feel that way. So, but yes, you need the sociopathic narcissist.
That's the main thing, sociopathic.
Well,
sociopathic
that's
narcissist.
The leader. That's the leader. Is you're going to find that leaders of cults are narcissists. It's all about me.
I need to create a checklist for that because I was going through that in my mind when you're saying that, and I think 50% of the stuff you said, I was thinking back to could I have placed Moses as a cult leader, right? Because he was the one that could speak to God in the mountain when they're wandering in the desert for 40 years, right? He was the one that could speak to God for those 40 years.
Yeah.
Do what I say, and then also, you guys are worshiping an idol. I'm gonna go and murder you.
Yes, but in the case of Moses, we have the stories of God actually doing things. So like Moses didn't send the quail. God sent the quail.
Sure.
So, Moses didn't produce the manna. God did that. So he was speaking for God, but God was acting.
Okay. It makes me also wonder about
And God, did the tablets.
Yeah.
Moses didn't.
And then jumping forward to then when the temple was established in Jerusalem, only the high priest could speak to God in the inner sanctuary of the temple, right? Mm-hmm. So they were the ones that interceded in the, on behalf of people, and they spoke for God. So I can see.
And remember, we're dealing with ancient history there.
Oh, I know.
And there, that was the way a lot of cults or religions in that time. That's how they operated, and but then finally, Jesus came and said, "You don't need a mediator anymore."
Got rid of the cult and turned it. No, I'm kidding.
No.
That's not it. No. I do find it interesting because I think we talked about this at the beginning. Is that many, and like you touched on this, and I never thought about this before, but many religious sects did originate as cults, and over time, and cults being their intention against the cultural and religious norms at the time, but over time they became more, accepted into the community, and at the time, over time, the cult was turned into recognized as some sort of a church or whatnot.
Yeah, so you kind of see that with Christianity in the first century.
Yep.
You see that with Mormonism.
Yes. I was thinking also Latter-day Saints, I think, started as something like that as well.
Well, they're connected with Mormons.
Okay, sorry, yes, Mormonism. And then, so what about Seventh-day Adventists? Adventists. I think they may have started as
I'm not really sure.
Okay. But it's interesting, you look at some of these, I don't want to call them offshoots of Christianity. I think when they first came out, they're probably, that's crazy. And then over time, they're more accepted as a normal, hey, this is the church of this.
Yeah.
But interesting stuff.
And the thing is, with cults, somebody described it as boiling a frog. You know how you boil a frog? You just put them in.
I've never boiled a frog. Can you explain to me what that?
Yes, I can explain that to you.
Have you boiled a frog before?
If you want to boil a frog, you can't just put the frog in boiling water because it'll jump out.
Okay.
But if you put the frog in kind of lukewarm water, and just gradually bring up the temperature to boiling, he doesn't realize until it's too late.
Is that a known
That
fact?
he's-
I've never
That
cooked
is a
frogs
metaphor.
before.
I don't
Okay.
know that anyone is actually.
I'm wondering. I thought
I
thought
do
you
not
liked
want to
frog
know
legs
if
or
any of
something.
you have boiled a frog. I just,
I was trying to think back to the same thing as when you boil a lobster, right? You put it head first, and
I don't know anything about boiling lobster either.
I don't
but,
either. That's what I've heard.
But that's what happens, because in the beginning they love bomb you.
Okay.
And they give you things and they treat you like royalty, and and then they hook you and they get you in there, and then it's like it's too late.
Yeah.
You can't get out. And it's difficult to get out of some cults because they will come after you. Like Scientology, they will come after you sometimes if you know enough.
Yeah. That could be a cult. Tom Cruise and John Travolta are part of that, right? We can discuss that next week. We can table that for next week.
The FLDS, they will come after you if you leave.
What is F?
That's the Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
That's the more
So I had an interesting with that
radical.
one. I mean, this is off. I mean, I thought about this
radical form
because
of
when you're going through the indoctrination and that stuff. So we had, I guess this is a grown up. We moved to a new neighborhood, and their neighbors. We didn't realize until after the fact they were Latter-day Saints, and at the beginning they're really nice to my mom. They said, "You should come out, come to our church, come hang out, with us." And she would turn them down, and probably after the fourth or fifth time when she turned them down, they just broke all contact with her and said, "Okay, well
Really?
you're not worth." So
Wow.
because they're trying to get her in, and she just turned them down because no, we're already part of a church. We go to this church here, and
And you won't get any coffee there because they don't drink coffee.
okay, that's good to
See,
know.
they don't
But it's
drink
funny because they're
caffeine.
trying to get her in with kindness, and she just turned him down after a certain
Yeah.
time. Like, okay, well, you're not worth me being a friend, or worth me
Yeah.
talking to you anymore
Yeah.
if I can't get you in my group.
Yeah, and it's not so much about the beliefs of a cult, but the behavior of its followers.
Okay.
So it's not that, most cults, they will indoctrinate you into whatever you're supposed to believe, but the main thing is your behavior, to be controlled. You don't actually have to believe it, but you cannot leave. You
Yeah.
have to do what I tell you to do. And then also Stockholm Syndrome, that sometimes happens when people are in cults long enough that they, that's Manson.
Okay.
His followers.
Yeah.
They wouldn't testify against him.
Yeah.
So that happens too.
Interesting.
And and these are extreme things. And the interesting thing is there are cults that have nothing to do with religion.
Yeah.
So we could talk about that too sometimes. But any time that you're in a group, you're a member of a group, and you have a leader who's telling you how to live your life, and and taking your money, and that's a cult.
Yeah. Well, interesting stuff, and that's what we can get to that more next week. So I think there's a couple different cults we can talk about, or a couple different movements we can talk about, and see how they fall within the characteristics. And like you said, the main thing is it's a charismatic leader, and they can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, there are women-led cults. We could talk about one of those next week too.
I'm trying to think if I know any. I don't.
Well, this is like a Christian.
Okay.
Started out as a Christian group,
Okay.
and they still think they're Christians.
I may try to
And
guess
maybe
after
the
we're
people
gone.
are,
I may try to guess after
because-
we're offline.
because their leader is no longer alive. So,
Okay.
but we can talk about that one.
Okay.
Well,
That's what we'll
anybody
do.
have a question about cults or a specific group that you think is a cult? We can look into that.
Yeah, if you have any questions, if you're watching this about the cult or specific cult, chime in or post it later on. We'll get to it. And like I said, this is a 3-part series. So next week we'll be just looking at some of the, we'll say, the more popular cults, may do some case studies on them throughout the 1900s or the 20th century. And then the following week, so in 2 weeks, we'll then break down is Christianity a cult once we go through this study and try to figure out. Because like I said at the beginning, I'm getting a little tired of every day I turn on news and there's some new news story about, Christians doing this, Christians doing that. It's like, well, I'm a Christian. I don't want to do that. And it's,
I'm just telling you, though, Don't go for the cat ladies.
For the cat ladies?
Yeah, that will not go well for you. I'm in the cult of cat ladies, and yeah.
I'll try to stay away from that one. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I don't like cats, so that's probably I'll stay away from that. Well, thanks again for stopping by and helping us unpack this discussion of cults.
Yeah, it was fun.
And if you have more questions or comments, put them in the chat. We'll get to them next week. I guess before we go, like Kathy, or not Kathy, I keep wanting to call you Kathy today. I don't know why. Are you Kathy? Do you
No,
have
but
any?
I have been called Kathy. I've been called Shelley.
Shelley.
I've been called different things, yeah.
So, if you missed the Coffee with Kelly this morning, you should go back and watch it. She did actually have coffee this week. She didn't drink it, but at least it was there, so you could say it was Coffee with Kelly. And then this Thursday, we'll be back with another Digging Deep at 7 p.m. Eastern. What's the topics? We're still on the Bible, right?
The Bible and science. Are
Science.
they incompatible?
Ooh. Hopefully you talk about evolution and how it...
You'll just have to tune
Okay.
in.
Sounds good. So science in the Bible, because, oh, it's funny. So you're getting rhyming words. Violence in the Bible, now science in the Bible, right?
Oh, yeah, they kind of rhyme.
Interesting. So yeah, if you want to learn more about that and what science has to say about the Bible and what Bible says about science, tune in on Thursday. We'll be back next Monday for another Josh Wonders Why. Thanks again for watching. Have a good day.
Bye.